Okay, so I'll go ahead and just start. I'm mainly just kind of walking you through. Well, I'm going to start walking you through the code in the app that's generated for you. So if you're not quite ready yet, you can keep finish and then should be able to catch up here. Okay, so I think my text is probably big enough. Let me know if it's not. So here we are, and we're looking at. So the first thing I'm going to do is start the server. So Blitz start, or I always type just Blitz S because it's a alias shortcut. And so what this does, it compiles your code, your Blitz code into Next.js code, and then actually runs, the runtime is Next.js. So these logs that you're seeing here are from Next.js. So we will start this. And there's quite a bit that's already set up for you out of the box here. At first, it can seem a little bit overwhelming maybe because there's so much stuff already set up, but it really saves you a lot of time. Now, why is my CSS offset? Huh, that's weird. Okay. So this is just a minimal UI. It must be a bug in this thing. So maybe somebody can open an issue on GitHub if you want to fix this CSS, or a PR too later after the workshop, or during it if you get bored. All right, so what you see, the one thing we already have set up is that your app is ready, including user sign up and login. So authentication is already done, and you can click on sign up, and I will go ahead, and now I'm signed up. Okay, so I have user ID of 1 and my user role is user, and I'm ready to go. And this is, yeah, I can log out, I can log back in. Okay, so that's pretty awesome. It's one of my favorite things, is that authentication is already set up. And if you want to add social login like Twitter or GitHub or anything, we have a Passport.js adapter, which if we go to the documentation website, you can search for Passport down here under auth, Passport.js. And this is a little adapter that you can drop in any Passport strategy and very easily add social login. So you can check that out later. Okay. So now let's look at some of the code. Okay, so I'll open up package.json first. So there's a number of scripts here, just for convenience. And you can see we have a lint script set up using ESLint. And so you already have that set up out of the box and you can run it. And then there's jest is already set up. And by default, there's no test. There is an example test, but it's disabled. But you can open up the test file. It's index.test.js.tsx. And you can see how to, do a simple test. Okay, you can see we have browser list, which is a Next.js thing, comes from that. So you can define your browsers that you need to compile for or transpile. So like if you need to support older browsers, you can add them in here. We have Prisma, little Prisma config for your database. We'll look at that a bit later. And we have Prettier set up. So this is automatically format your code. And you can see that we have semicolons disabled by default. You can change that if you want. We have Husky, which is Git hooks. So if you haven't used this before, it allows you to run certain actions, like whenever you're making a new commit or pushing something. And so by default, we have pre-commit hook. Welcome, Mylan. I wonder, how can I, just a second, so let me, this is the new screen. Let me upload this really quick and link it so that people can. Just 1 second here. Okay, there is the link to the couple slides, or the setup slide. So if you're just joining, click that link that I put in the chat, and it'll show you how to create a new Blitz app, install the Blitz CLI, create a new Blitz app if you want to follow along. Okay. So yeah, so Husky, so by default we have a pre-commit, and so this will lint, uses lint staged, which is a nice little tool, and it'll only lint the files that have been changed, and then it uses pretty quick to format those files that have changed. So it's fairly quick. And then pre-push we run TSC. So we have TypeScript set up by default. Currently, we're going to be adding support to generate a plain JavaScript Blitz application, but it's not fully working yet. We'll have that working by 1.0. So yeah, we're on TSC to do your check your TypeScript stuff, and then npm run lint and test on push. Okay. And so here's, you can see we have quite a few dependencies because of everything. We have Prisma. We have concurrent mode enabled by default. So this means that an experimental version of React is required for that. And it allows us to use Suspense for all our data fetching and things, which is really nice. So instead of having an if loading, else if, like a bunch of this conditional statements in your components, you can use the Suspense component as a fallback and the error boundary as an error boundary to catch your errors. So it's really nice. We'll look at that. And then Zod is, we have in here by default, which is a really nice way to do runtime validation. So like a validation for your form inputs. So it needs to have a password required, certain length. Zod is how you do that. And then we also use Zod to, which you can use anything else, but we recommend Zod because it works good with TypeScript. You validate the inputs to your mutation. So like on your server, so you ensure that the input is like correct, what you're expecting. And then number of development dependencies like testing library, some TypeScript stuff, ESLint, Husky, Jest, etc. Okay. All right. So now let's look at the file structure. So let's see, probably be easier in here. Okay. So we have we have like a bunch of config files and stuff here in the root directory. One thing to know is the blitz config.js. This is the same format as the next config.js. Welcome, Simon. And we have that's mostly there. And then the top level folders is utils, which is empty, test, which is where we have some tests set up, public, which is where you would put like favicons, any images, anything that's just like a static file. And there's an integrations folder, which is a great place to have integrations with third parties. So like in one of my projects, I have an integrations / I have a Sentry file in there. I have a, it could be like a Google Analytics file in there. It could be all sorts of things like that, integrating with third-party APIs. The DB folder is where we have the Prisma schema file, and we'll look at that a little bit later. And we have index.ts, which instantiates the Prisma client and then exports that. And then so this, you can just import DB from anywhere in your app, and that will work. And then most of your code is going to go in the app folder. So this is one thing different than Next.js. Next.js requires a single pages folder in the root of your project. But one thing we have with Blitz is we allow you to have multiple pages folders. So we have app pages, you can see right here, and we have a number of pages in here. And then you could also have a pages inside users or inside anywhere. So it allows you to separate your pages folders and organize them by like domain or models or so forth. So in one of my projects, I have like in this top level folder, I have a billing folder, and then inside that I have all this stuff related to billing, components, pages, queries, mutations. I have another one that's like account or accounts, and so it allows you to organize that way. So the main thing that we have here to start with is we have a number of pages. So underscore app is the very top entry level of your like React app. And in here, so you can see right here is like where it renders your page. So we have an error boundary in here by default, and this allows you to catch any errors from anywhere in your app, and then you can render this. We handle this fallback, and it'll render this based on your error. Now you can have error boundaries nested inside your like lower levels, just like try catch. So you can have a top level try catch, and then you have try catches, farther into your code. And if the inside catches it, then it'll catch it there instead of here. Underscore document is where it renders your HTML and any type of script tags, stuff like that. If you need, you can add that in here. A 404 page, and then this default index. So we'll be changing this. Okay, now layouts. So one thing, if you have used Next.js, you know that the top level app component, your pages components. So if you want to have a layout that doesn't re-render whenever you change pages, or not just re-render, but unmount and remount, you have to have your code inside underscore app. Okay, so if you have like a layout component and you import it in all your pages and then use it in there, that layout component is going to be unmounted and remounted on every page mount. And so the solution for that is to use this trick where we have a get layout function and you define this get layout on the page. Okay, so I think we use that down here in, yes, in index.tsx under pages. You can see we have the page component, and then we set a static property on that, get layout. And this is a function that takes a page, it takes this component above, actually, the home page, and then we can define that whatever component we want. So layout component in this case. And then we put the page inside of that. And so what this allows you to do is have this layout component not unmount and remount. I think it'll re-render whenever you change pages, but it won't unmount and remount, so you won't lose any of your state in there. So that's really awesome. And how that works is inside of underscore app. We call component.getLayout. Okay. So if you have any questions about anything as I'm going along, just put them in the chat, and I'll happy to help answer. So the default layout component we have is very simple. We just have a head tag for title and stuff. But this is a starting point for you to do. And then probably you want to have multiple layouts. So maybe you want to have like a marketing layout or like public layout or something. where it's your marketing website, and then you can have an app layout for like your authenticated app part of your site. And then we have your inside components. We have the form abstraction and a labeled text field. So this, like forms are kind of messy. And so this gives you a running start on a nice form abstraction. So it's customized based on what you chose. So in this case, I used Final Form. And so this allows you to use the Zod schema to do the validation. And then it has some default like rendering the errors, rendering the submit button. And so you can totally change any of this. You can delete it for that matter if you want to, but it's a nice starting point. And then probably the bulk of the functionality that you get out of the box is in the auth, under app auth. And so this is to do your authentication and authorization. So let's look at login. So under app, auth, mutations, login, this is your login mutation. Okay, so now if you're not familiar with Blitz, it has this concept of like a zero API data layer, and what it means is zero API quotes. It means that as a developer, you don't have to develop the API. The API is automatically generated for you. It's abstracted away into a compile step. So as a developer, you can just focus on your code, write a function, import it into your components, and use it. And so this is how that worked. These mutations and the mutations folders and queries folders inside app are special folders, magic folders that will be converted into an API endpoint. Okay, so this is very similar. Like just like Next.js, you export a page as a default function. You export a component as a default function in the pages folder, and it's converted into a page at that URL. Same thing with the API route. You export an API function as an API handler, and it will turn it into an API route. So the same way with queries and mutations in Blitz, you export a default function, and that will be turned into an API route as a mutation or a query. So we have this function, we call it login, and the first argument to queries or mutations is the input to your query mutation. So you can only have one input argument. So that means you probably want it to be an object, and then anything you need, you put it all in that single object. Okay, so you can't add multiple inputs. So that's one requirement here. And then the second, the second parameter here to all mutation of the queries is a context parameter. And this is provided by middleware. Okay, so HTTP middleware. So if you have used Express or heard about Express, Express is very middleware focused. Like basically you do everything in middleware. But Blitz, that is not the case. Middleware is very minimal, and it's only used for times when you have to have access to the raw HTTP endpoints. If you're doing okay, so an example is authentication, where you need to access, read and write cookies, the HTTP cookies. So that's a perfect case for middleware. And then we add this session context parameter on that context, and that allows us to do authentication stuff. And where this middleware comes from is blitzconfig.js. There's a middleware item here, and you can see where you a middleware array from mutation and queries, and it'll only run for just that one. Now, if you need full access to Node to the Node request response objects, just use an API route, like for Stripe webhooks, things like that, where you need access to the raw payload. Then use an API route. Okay, so this is kind of we're here in this login mutation. The first thing you want to do in a mutation is validate the input, okay? Because this is going to be open to the wild. It's an API endpoint, which means anyone on the internet can send stuff here, okay? So you have to make sure that the fields that are there are required, and then you also want to strip out any fields that you don't want, right? So you don't, if you have an admin boolean on a like a user or something, you don't want to let people just add admin in there true and then like set themselves to true. Okay, so it's very important for your security to do some input validation, and this uses Zod. I guess we can go ahead and look at this. You can see it's in this validations folder or component, or I mean file. Okay, so login input. So this, we import Z from Zod, and we define an object, and we say this is going to be an email, and it's going to be a string, and then it's going to be formatted as an email. And then password is going to be a string. Okay, and so you can see the same up here for sign up. We have similar, except that password will have minimum of 10 and a max of 100. So let's go back to login. So we import that schema, and then we call .parse on it and pass in the input. And that will throw an error if email and password is not a string or if it's not there at all, whatever you define. And if you define a certain length, then it'll throw an error if it doesn't meet that requirements. Okay. So, and then it'll also strip out anything that you don't want. And then the benefit also is via TypeScript, you know that, hey, this is going to be a string. You're guaranteed that is going to be whatever you want it to be. So that's really nice. Okay, so now next thing, now that we have the valid input, we have this authenticate user function where you pass an email and password, and that's going to return a user. Now this is a file currently, so most of this code is generated straight into your project. We may abstract some of it into Blitz itself, but right now it's all here. So if we go to this authenticate user, this is in auth utils, app auth/auth utils. Definitely some of this hash password stuff and verify password we're find that there's a get that user from the database. So database imports from database, that database/index file is going to find the first user where the email is equal to that email. Okay, so we get the user. If the user does not exist, if we can't find the user, then we're going to throw an authentication error. Okay, so that's how everything around error handling in Blitz is based on throwing and catching errors, which, so we're going to throw an authentication error, and that's imported from Blitz, authentication error. Okay, and then we're going to verify, we're going to call this verify password. If it's valid, then we're good. If it needs to be rehashed, so this is the security thing provided by Secure Password. If Secure Password, if they come out with an update that has a better hashing algorithm, it'll automatically update the hash for your password. Super awesome. Okay, and then we just return the user. Okay, so now that we have the user verified, we know that after this point, they are authenticated, because if they're not, it's going to throw an error. So we keep going. And now this is how we use the built-in Blitz authentication system or session management. Okay, so we're going to create a session. This means that you're saying, hey, this user now has a session. We're going to track that they are logged in. Okay, and so you pass in a user ID and roles array. So in this case, we're going to say the user model has a role by default in all the apps. And then you can also pass in any other data. So like an organization ID or profile picture or anything else that you need, some minimal data about that user on the front end. You don't want to put very much in there, but only for strategic stuff. So by default, user ID and roles is mostly good. Okay, so let's go look at how we use this, and you can see kind of how the magic works. So this is user roles are, so by default, they are in your database. So if we go to database/schema.prisma, there is a user model by default and a session model. And your user model has ID, created that, updated that, has a name, a field, email field, hash password, and then it has a role field. And by default, it's set to user. Okay, so that's where the role is defined. And then a user has has a relationship to sessions. Yeah, the role can be any string in this case. Now, if ideally, it's recommended to use enums. Prisma has enum support, so you can do like enum role, user, admin, etc. But we don't have that set up by default because SQLite is what we use by default, and it doesn't work with SQLite. We will add an ability to switch between SQLite and Postgres whenever you're generating a new app, and then we can make a default for Postgres. But for a production application, I would highly recommend switching to Postgres and using that in production and locally, and then it allows you to use enums. And then this could be, instead of string, it would be role, and then default. And then, so yeah, so the role, if we go back to login, how the role is set for authorization is right here. Okay, so there's not anything magic about the roles. You're passing in whatever you want here directly. Thanks for that link, Patrick. Okay, so we're going to look at how this login function is used. So when under app, auth, components, login form. All right, so right here, the first thing, I mean, we import a number of things, but the key thing we're looking at right now is this. We import that function we were just looking at, okay? Now this, we can use, we have with the TS config or JS config in the JS version, you can import, we have alias, a base path set up, so you can import from an absolute path. So anywhere in your project, you can import from, so this is importing from app, which is a root folder. You can import DB from DB, which is a default folder, or a folder in the root. So, okay, in this case, we're just doing, it could be relative to, but we're just set up by absolute. So you import that function, okay? There's no code generation or anything. We just import this thing over here. Nothing, okay? So the magic has not happened yet. And then we have a use mutation hook that we import from Blitz. And then we pass that login function that we just were looking at, import that, pass it in here, and this returns a function that we can call. And then also the second argument to this is a thing like is loading, is success, and then a number of other things that you can use if you need to display a loading spinner or things of that nature. Okay, now this form component is that form abstraction from app components form. And you can see it's pretty nice here. You can just pass in the name of the button, pass in that schema. So remember that Zod schema we looked at for login import? So we're doing that as validation on the server in that mutation, but we're also using that exact same schema on the client in this form. Okay, so it's shared validation, which is really nice. You don't have to duplicate it. And then here in the on submit, here you have the label text fields, which is another abstraction you can look at. And then here on submit, we call this mutation function that comes from this hook, and you pass in the values. Now notice here that the TypeScript values are all set. So the values here on the submit is email and password, and they're both strings. That type comes from the schema. Okay, so that's one reason we have this form abstraction set up for you, is so the TypeScript types work just like you want them to. And then also this login mutation is also fully TypeScript typed. Okay. So this values, so if we change this to be something else, we get a TypeScript error because it says this argument of type hack is not assignable to parameter of type email string, password string. Okay, so this is really nice that all your TypeScript stuff is there without running a code generation process. Like if you've used GraphQL with TypeScript, you have to have a process that's sitting there recompiling the types anytime you change something. But here in Blitz, since you're just importing that function, it just works just like any other thing. Okay? So that's the magic right there, is that at runtime, this import is turned into an API call. Okay, so you can think of Blitz queries and mutations is running a function over the network. Okay, so it's just calling a function, but instead of it being instantly on the same machine, it's just calling the function and it's running on another machine on the server. And queries and mutations work the same way. Okay, so let's look at the signup mutation. So this is very much the same way. We have the signup schema, we validate the input. In this case, we hash the password, and then we're going to create the user. Okay, so this is how you use Prisma. And let me get the Prisma docs. So if you haven't used Prisma before, you will definitely want to familiarize yourself with the documentation. But it's fairly intuitive. So here we have db.user, and so this is going to be db. Whatever models you have. So db. In this case, we have user and session, because that's the two models we have. And then we're going to create that user, and we're going to pass in the data. So in this case, it's an email, hash password, and role. And then you have the ability to select certain information. So in this case, we're selecting only the ID, name, email, and role because we don't want to return the hash password to the front end. And this is, right now, it's a little bit clunky with Prisma because you have to manually select, or the other way is to say, you can do like we do in Auth right here, where you just get everything, but then you extract out hash password and then just return the rest. But Prisma is working on, I think they're going to add an ability to have a like a private attribute or hidden attribute to put in your schema over here. And so you could say hash password like hidden or something private. And that would, by default, it would not return it. So hopefully they add that. That would be really nice. Go back to signup mutation. And then we do the same thing again. We just create the session. And then the same thing on the front end. It's same thing. Okay, so logout. So logout is very simple. That you don't need any input to this mutation. You're just going to use that context parameter in session and call session.revoke. Okay. So, and that will revoke that. And then to do this from the front end is, I think it's in here in index.tsx. Yeah, logout. So here we have a button. On click, we call this function, and this comes from the user mutation hook, where you pass that logout query or mutation to. Okay, so now now that you have user signed up, logged in, you probably want to display some information about that user, right? Like the name and all of that sort of stuff. So how we already have it set up for you to do that. We have a use current user hook. You can see it being used right here. And this current user, you can see that it has an email of ID, or yeah, email string, ID number, name, string or null, role, string. So this TypeScript types is coming all the way from the database, thanks to Prisma. And then you can, if the current user is there, render stuff. Otherwise, render sign up. Okay, so let's look at this hook. This use current user hook is in app hooks. Yeah, having attached across the full stack is amazing, Taylor. So here, this is very simple. We used use query from Blitz, same as the use mutation hook. You pass in a query function, and in this case, there's no input arguments, so we just pass in null or undefined or something, and then this is going to return that. And again, this second argument to this tuple has like is error. It has refetch to if you want to refetch from the cache, etc. This use query hook and use mutation hook is built on top of React query. So it automatically handles caching for you, automatically handles refetching. So if every time you come here, if you leave the tab and come back, it refreshes it. So if the data in your database changes, then when you come back, it's going to be updated. So that's really nice. And then if you, I think, okay, yeah, if you reload the page, it does a hard load. But if you go to another, let's see, so I think if we go to sign up, and then, well, if you're clicking a link back and forth in your, so if you navigate somewhere else and then come back, the data will be cached, it'll be shown instantly. And then it'll be refreshed in the background and updated. So it's going to show the cache data like if you back up, which is really nice. Okay. So I think that covers most of that. Okay, so let's actually start adding some new stuff. How about that? So, like I said, we are pretending to build a NASA command center. So it's not going to be anything fancy, but we just pretend that we're doing something cool. Okay, so go to your terminal, and you're going to want to kill the server if you have it already running, because we're going to be adding stuff to the database. And currently you have to restart the server every time you do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to add a rocket model. And so we'll be able to track rockets in our database. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type inside your app folder, type Blitz generate. And you can do different things. So you can Blitz generate, there's like CRUD, resource, model. But right now we're going to use all. So this will generate all the different things that we can do. And then we're going to say rocket. So this is the name of what we're going to generate is a rocket. And by the way, this can be rocket or rockets. It doesn't matter. It's both. It's automatically normalized to the files generated. So you don't have to worry about remembering how to type it. Let's generate all rocket, and we're just going to say a name. By default, it's a string, but you can specify it if you want. :string. It could also be :boolean, :int, :float. All the things that are supported by Prisma, you can. So we're going to use string. Yeah. So how do I get these auto completions in my terminal? That is because I use the fish shell. Fish shell.com, I think. Yeah. Finally, a command line shell for the 90s. But it's really awesome. And they do keep updating it and so forth. But that's how that works. It's because I've already typed that command before. Okay, yeah, so we're ready. We're just going to hit enter. And so this is going to generate a number of files. The first thing, it says a model has been created successfully. And what this has done is we open the schema file, and down here at the bottom, you can see that it added the rocket model. And by default, anything that you create is going to have an ID, a created at, and an updated at fields. And then you can see we also have a name. Okay, and then we also generated all these files. So we have 4 pages. So these are the page to display a list of rockets, a page to create a new rocket, a page to view a single rocket, and then a page to edit a single rocket. So this is a very good pattern. If you don't know how to lay out your app, this is kind of the default way you want to do it. And this is how like Ruby on Rails does it, Laravel, etc. And then we have a rocket form component. We have two queries to get a single rocket and to get a list of rockets. And then in mutations, we have create a rocket, delete a rocket, update a rocket. So these are all the what we call CRUD: create, read, update, delete. This is basically everything you need to do. It's all the operations that you can do on the model. Okay, now we need to do this thing that says now run Blitz DB migrate to add this model to your database. So anytime you update your schema, you have to run Blitz DB migrate to actually make that happen in your database. And then it also at this time generates the TypeScript for Prisma. So name a migration, you can hit enter, or you can say rocket or add a rocket, whatever you want to do. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. It's kind of overwhelming, all the logs, but this is going to be cleaned up drastically soon. Prisma is coming out with a new migration feature that we're doing. It's similar, but it's much better. They're working on getting production ready, so it's going to be changing a little bit, but the process is basically the same. Okay, so now we can just run blitz start. Blitz S again is a alias. So I think all of the commands on the CLI have an alias, which is just the first letter. So blitz start, blitz generate, you can just do blitz G. We like to make life easy. Okay, so let's open this up. Okay, so what we can do is go to /rockets. And so one thing to note here is the styling is like very plain because we installed Tailwind, and Tailwind has a reset, CSS reset with it, and so everything looks like worse out of the box than if you didn't have Tailwind. But these are buttons. It's a previous and a next button, and a link to create rocket. So maybe I shouldn't have even installed Tailwind for this, but here we are. So you can see that if there's a list of rockets, they would be listed here, but there's none. So the first thing, we can click on rocket, create rocket, and this is a link that takes us to the new page. So /rockets/new. Okay, now this is a title, says create new rocket, put your form fields here, but for now, just click submit. So this is a very basic scaffolding, and you can see there's nothing here, but there's a submit button. If we click on submit, it's going to create a new rocket with a name of my name. And you can see we just say a success message here. Okay, it did work. And click OK. And then that's going to take us over to the page for viewing a single rocket. So see, now the URL is rockets/rockets/one. So that's the ID. It's the ID of one. You can see here. And if you go to your terminal, in the logs, you can see that we log what's happening. So back here, create rocket started with input, and then create rocket finished in 4 milliseconds. And then here, get rocket started with input, and it finished. Yeah, yeah, good point, Jeremy, about if you go to app styles, index CSS, this Tailwind base, we can comment that out, and then it should get rid of the styles reset. Yeah, there. This is a little bit more clear what's actually happening here. So again, how I did that was go to app styles index.css and comment out tailwind base. Okay, so now we've seen a list of rockets. So actually, let's go back there. So this is /rockets. Now you can see there's a list of rockets, and we can click on this rocket. It's a link that takes us back to the single page to see the one rocket. And then we have two options here. We can edit this or we can delete it. The edit is a link that takes us to /rockets/1/edit. And again, this is just very basic scaffolding. It just shows you what the thing is. And if you click submit, it's going to change the name to my new name. This is all hard coded. We'll go in and change it. Okay, and now it's a new name. So let's go ahead and delete it. If we click delete, this will be deleted. Okay, and it's gone. So I'm going to go ahead and create one more, just so we have something in the list here. Okay, so let's go look briefly at the files that were generated for this. So let's open up back to my up here. Okay, so all right, under app, under the top level app folder, you can see there's now a rockets folder. And all of the code that was generated for the rockets, it's all in here. So pages, remember how I talked about we can have multiple pages folders? So now there's a pages up here with your app document, etc. And now there's a pages folder down here in rockets that has a folder of rockets inside it and the pages. Uh-oh. We have some reason a TypeScript error here that we should investigate. But you will notice, so this is what we're looking at is app/rockets/in/pages/rockets/index.tsx. Right here's the full path along the top. Rockets pages, rockets index. And this has a component in here, and it uses use paginated query hook. Okay, so the code that's generated already has pagination set up for you, which to me is awesome because I always hate adding pagination code. It's just like, I don't know, annoying. But here you go. It's all done for you. You can see we have items per page, so you can define this to be whatever you want. And then we have this, we roll over the list of rockets, map over them, display them, and then a button previous next. So you can see here the previous next, and it's disabled because the buttons are disabled by default because there's no more pages. So if we added more and there was actually a second page, then you would be able to click next or previous. Okay, now let's look at how Suspense works. All right, so this is probably new to many of you for React concurrent mode. I mentioned this earlier at the beginning that we have concurrent mode enabled by default, which requires the experimental version of React. This is the version of React that Facebook has been using in production for 2 or maybe even 3 years now, quite a while. So it's fairly solid. It's just not officially released yet, and we really haven't had any issues with it. But the benefit is we can use Suspense for our data loading, which I really like. So let's look at this. We have this query hook, use paginated query, and you can see there's no if loading, show the loading screen, and there's no if error, show the error screen. Okay. But how does this work? Well, we take that component up here and we wrap it in a suspense component. this suspense component you import from React. So just like you would import use state from React, you import suspense component from React, and you wrap it in that component that has something loading, and you pass a fallback prop that is the whatever you want to display. It can be a spinner or something. And that's how you do the loading screen. So it's very, very simple and very intuitive. So if we refresh the page here, you can see briefly it says loading. And that is from this suspense component right here. Okay, so anytime you have a anytime you're doing some using use query hook, you're going to you have to have one of these suspense components somewhere above you in your tree. So usually I have this on every page. I have suspense component here. Usually, like you'll have the heading. You can display the header for the page. Usually I put the menu in the layout component, which I think we'll get to that. And then we have the display, like the static stuff around your app is there, but then there's just a loading spinner for the kind of the core contents of that page. Okay, so now how does error handling work? So let's go look at we have a query for get rocket. So this is app, under rockets, under queries, get rocket.ts. And this is very similar to what we already looked at for login. We have the input, which we have types coming from here. Something is up with this Prisma types. Oh, I bet this is the I don't use VS Code. Kill the TypeScript server. Sometimes after you run let's DB migrate and it generates new types, you have to restart the TypeScript server. Otherwise your types won't show up correctly. And I don't use VS Code, so I don't know how to restart the TypeScript server in here. Okay, here we are. Yeah, so now the types work. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do inside this thing is we're going to call context.session.authorize, and this is how you do authorization. This is how you ensure someone is logged in. Okay, so let's go back to this Rockets page, and I'm going to open up a private window, and look, it shows me a login component. Okay, because I am calling session.authorize. Okay, so in Blitz, you want to think about securing your data, protecting your data, not necessarily your pages. You can still protect your pages from just a UX perspective, but as far as actually securing the access to your data, you want to do that in queries and mutations. Hey, Martin, current command save doesn't exist. Oh, oh, lovely. I think they that new Prisma migrate thing. I think they just released that today. So probably between when I generated mine, whenever you generated your project, it's using Prisma, probably 2.13 maybe now. So there's two ways you can solve that. You can probably the easiest is to go into package.json and change Prisma to be version 2.12, and then run npm or yarn install, and then run blitzdb migrate. So we will need to update Blitz to be compatible with that new version. Yes, when generating a new app, it automatically uses the latest version of all your dependencies. And we have it fixed to a major version. So if there are breaking changes between, like, there shouldn't be breaking changes. It should just keep working. And then if there's a major change, we have to go in and test it and manually update it. But Prisma doesn't do some version, and they make breaking changes on minor versions. So it kind of messes this up. Okay, so we're talking about authorization here. So this line right here is how you require someone to be logged in. So um, if you want to allow anyone to access this data, just comment that out or remove it, and then you can reload this page. And oh, I didn't save this file. I didn't save that file. So, I saved it. Get rock. Oh, silly me. I'm over at Get Rockets. You can see that that's how you do login or logout. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is the error handling for, actually the first thing I will show you the error handling for login. Okay, so what happens is if the user is not logged in, this call right here throws an authorization error. Okay, so how does this work? We have a function on the server. This is the mutation or query in this case, and it throws an authorization error. So how do you think this would work if you're on the code, you throw an error? How does that get to the front end? Well, we have this magic in Blitz where that error is thrown all the way into your React app. Okay, so you don't have to check your API response on the front end or anything for an error object. It's in fact you use an error boundary on your front end to catch it. This is like, oh sorry, this is kind of mind blowing to me, but it's so sweet. So under app, under pages, underscore app.tsx, this error boundary, this top level error boundary by default is where it's going to catch this thing. And then it passes this fallback component, which is right here. So fallback component has an error, it gets the error. And so here we have if error is an instance of authentication error, then we are going to render a login form. Wow, look at that. Okay, so this is a really nice UX, which is, I think, which is why it's in here by default, is that if you're not logged in, so let's open up that page again. If you're not logged in, let's go back to Get Rocket, save this. Okay. Show it doesn't redirect. Notice that the URL stays the same. It doesn't redirect you to a login page. It just gives you the login form. Okay, so this is really nice because you as a developer don't have to worry about redirects and query strings and all of that sort of stuff. You can just log in. And bam, there you're back to your data. Okay, this is one of the nice things about this error boundary. Oh, so now there's another type of error. It's called an authorization error. Now, remember that authentication is who you are. Do we know who you are? Are you logged in? Authorization is we already know who you are, but are you allowed? Are you permitted to access a certain resource? So if we go back to the Get Rocket query, authorize. So by default, authorize, if without any arguments, only requires you to be logged in. But if you want to require a certain role, so let's say only a user with a role of admin can access this, then pass in the admin role. And now, if we go back here, oh, so now we get an error that says, sorry, you are not authorized to access this. All right, so this is really powerful. You already have authorization in here. And you do that by passing in whatever role that is allowed to this authorize function. And then how that's handled is this else if error and underscore app and this error fallback. If error is an instance of authorization error, we render this error component that says, sorry, you're not authorized to access this. Okay, so if you don't like how this looks, then just add your own custom component here. If you don't like the behavior, change this right here. And then it has a default error component that it'll be similar to this, but if it's on the server, it'll be like 500 or whatever. Okay, again, if you have any questions as I'm going along, just let me know. Or if you want to go faster or slower or something, just let me know, please. Okay, one last thing on this get rocket query is we do this, call the database, get the rocket, and then if it's not found, then we throw a not found error. And this error object comes from Blitz, not found error. And so how this will, let me go back to how that will work. So let's go to a rocket of ID of 3. Let's try to load that page. And we get a 404 page. This could not be found. Okay, so again, a really nice user experience here. And that is because of this throw not found error. Okay, so you can throw any type of errors here, and it's caught in this top level fallback. Okay, now something else that I want to, okay, good to hear, Martin. Something else that is unique to Blitz that is really powerful and awesome is serialization of data between the client and the server. So let me find the best place to look at this. Okay, so I guess so the first place. So we'll look at in our schema. Load the latest schema. Okay, so in the Rocket model, you can see we have created that and updated that, and these are date time objects. Okay, so they're stored in the database as a date field, and this comes out of Prisma. So here in the query, this Rocket has created that, and it is a date. Okay, and then we return a date here. So usually, whenever you have an API endpoint, to send, like for the API, you have to convert the date to a string, right? And then on the client in your component, you have to take the string and convert it back to a date if you want to manipulate it or format it or anything. But we do that automatically for you. So look at this rocket that's returned from that query. The rocket dot created that. Notice the type is date, and it actually is a date at runtime. Okay, so exactly what you return from the query or mutation is exactly what you get on the front end. So it even works with more advanced types like a map, a JavaScript map object, or a set object. You can return a regex, all these various things. We actually built a custom serialization library to work for this. So that's one of the awesome things about Blitz is serialization just works, especially with dates and stuff. You don't that whole headache goes away. Okay. So let's go ahead and just change some of the UI a little bit. Let's go to this Rockets page. You can see that it was generated under Rockets pages, Rockets index.tsx. It sets the layout component. It uses the default layout component. So that means if we change the layout component, we should see the change here. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to open layout.tsx, and I'm going to add a basic kind of just a vertical sidebar with like a menu along the side, and then just a big open space on the right side. So this is going to be div.flex, and inside that is going to be another div and another div. Children is going to go here, and this is going to be, we're going to say like this is a menu. And this, let's say we're going to add the class names. So since we have Tailwind installed, we can say background, the gray, and let's go for like 800, and then text white. All right. So this is getting there. So probably I'm going to go back to styles index, and I'm going to uncomment this tailwind base. Index.css uncomment base. So bring back that reset. And I'll fix. Actually, never mind. I'm just going to add HTML and body and set margin. I think it's the margin 0, padding 0. HTML and body margin padding 0, and I'll get rid of that spacing around the side. Okay. So now go back to my layout component, layout. And so now we want to add some padding to this sidebar menu. So let's do E dash, what should we do? Not bad. And let's give it a fixed width of so maximum tier is 26. Well, that's plenty big. Let's see. What's that? Width dot. Oops. Oh no. To 48. And then we also want to make this thing right here. We're going to say height full, I think is what we want. Full, or there's a width, yeah, height screen. That's what I want. H-screen. And there we go. All right, so it's starting to look a little better. Okay, Taylor has a question. Do you think Blitz could one day be used to generate scaffold code for React Native applications as well? Or would that always be beyond its scope? We need to write our own API to access our app data and user data. Great question. My dream and my goal from like very early when I started this was to be able to have a monolithic application, not just with web but also mobile. Okay, and I'm pretty sure I can pull this off and make it happen. I don't know how yet, but I'm pretty sure I can pull it off where just like we have it here in the web application where you import the server code directly into your component and just use it. You don't have to worry about an API. I think I can achieve that same thing with a React Native app. So you would have a React Native code base in your same project, in the same folder, in the repo, and then you can import the same queries just over into your web components and into your React Native components, and maybe even share the. I guess if you was using React Native Web, you could even share the same components. So I think that's possible. Pretty sure it's possible. Make it happen somehow, because that would be absolutely amazing. Um, I think maybe the first step would be to generate a client. So have like a CLI command, run a command, and it'll generate like a folder or something, a file that would have it would export a nice client, like a JavaScript, TypeScript client that would have all of the API endpoints and everything and the types for them. And we could do that for multiple languages. So we could generate a client library for Go, for Flutter, for for I don't know, whatever else you want to do. Okay, so back to this the styling thing here. So in this layout, so let's add a little bit of padding around this main container. And I guess we'll just go with padding 6 for this one. And let's add a couple links here in this menu. Um, so I am the first thing I'm gonna use the div, and I'm gonna say uh, Reactathon as a command center, and I'm gonna add another div, and inside that div, actually, we'll change this to be the UL because it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Um, and we have a list item. Okay, and so link, we're going to import a link from Blitz. And we'll say href equals / rockets. And it'll be rockets. And you don't have to have an A tag inside of here unless you want to style it, unless you want to pass custom props to this. Which let's see if we can make this yes, we will go ahead and add that thing there. I only have to do this to set up because we have the L1 CSS set disabled. Okay, this is better. So now we have this. So rockets. Okay, we also want homepage, right? So let's just duplicate this. Or if you can make this, turn this into a component, it'll probably make more sense. You could have just a JSON object with your links and the titles for the links. Okay, there we go. Now, rockets, homepage, rockets. Well, that's weird. I'll reload the page. Maybe. Oh, it's because of the, see the styles are changing here? And that's because of the app pages index. There's a bunch of styled JSX code in here that is changing some of the font stuff. So let's just get rid of that. Okay. All right, so let's see what I got next. If there's something specifically that you all want me to show you or cover or something, let me know. Okay, so let's add a new model called launches, and then we'll be able to have we'll be able to like set a launch and add a countdown timer for a launch, and then ideally, I think we should have time to add a button to delay the launch, and then also have basically like live updates set up so that anyone watching will, if the launch gets delayed, they can see like, oh, the countdown just changed automatically without reloading the page. Yeah, so next thing, go back to your terminal, kill your server, and run Blitz generate, or G. I'm going to use Blitz G because it's easy. Blitz G all launches. Then we're going to add a name to this, and we're also going to say belongs to Rocket, Rocket. Okay, so this is a nice syntax for generating Prisma models with relationships, because the Prisma um, to define a relationship, a database relationship with Prisma is it takes two fields, which it totally makes sense. It's definitely nice, but if you're not familiar with it, it can be a little bit hard to remember. So the nice shortcut is this thing here. You can say belongs to Rocket, and it'll generate the necessary things here. Okay, so it generated all those things. You can see it generated this launch model, and then it also has a rocket ID, which is an int, and a rocket field, which is that relationship. All right. Now, we also want to add the inverse relationship, which if you're using VS Code, it might do it automatically whenever you save the file. But I'm going to go ahead and just say Blitz generate model rocket, and I'm going to say launches, and it's going to be launch and list syntax. Yeah, that's cool. Cool, Taylor. He said, looking at the code, I feel like I'm looking at React for the first time, where I didn't quite know what React was and what was ES6. Same way with Prisma and Blitz, basically. So we're going to run Blitz G model rocket launches launch, and this is going to update the current model that we have. Let's just go look at our schema. Because we want to have this relationship two ways, and so we'll be able to call rocket.launches. So the launches is the name that it's going to be, and then this is the type, which in this case is the launch model, and it's a list of launches. If you're on a different terminal like ZSH, you might have to wrap this in quotes. Okay, now you can see that we have launches, launch here, and the new model. Okay, so last thing is run blitz db migrate, and we'll call this launches. Okay, sweet. Go ahead and start the server, and go back to the layout component, app layouts, layout.tsx, and we'll go ahead and add another menu item here for launches. Definitely, well, I should have added, I'm going to go ahead and change it while I'm here. We need a time, we need a launch time for, right? So let's G model. So this time I'm just going to update the schema. go into launch, and I'm going to copy this to that, and I'm going to say time. We'll call this time field. It's going to be a date time. And run BlitzDB migrate again. Okay, let's start. That's running. Compiling the page, apparently. Okay, here we go. So home rockets launches. I'll go ahead and create a launch. Status code 500. Okay, that's because so I'll look at the server logs, and there's a nice error here from Prisma. It says error invalid prisma.launch.create. And this says argument time for data.time is missing and argument rocket. And this is because in the database, time is marked as required and the rocket relationship is also marked as required. Okay, so as a simple way to do this, well, there's two ways we can do this. We can, let's use the Blitz console for the first way. So if you run Blitz console in the terminal, yeah, John, JS has came a long ways, especially TypeScript. I mean, I love TypeScript. So Blitz console, if you run it, this is really cool. If you've used Ruby on Rails, it's like a Rails console. If you have not used Ruby on Rails, you are missing out on this awesome console thing. So I use this a lot when I'm developing Blitz apps because it allows you to access your database. So type db. Well, you need to wait because it's a promise. So db.await.user.find all, or let's find many. It's not find all. Find many. And there, I can run a command to access this. Okay, so it has your code automatically loaded. There is currently a bug where some files like queries and mutations are not automatically loaded, but many of your files are automatically loaded, like integration files and things you can load in here automatically and run them. It's super slick. Okay, so I also want to get, let's say we have Rocket. All right, and so now I'm going to create a launch. So launch dot create, and it's going to be an object. And the first thing is going to have a data key in there, and we're going to say that there's two things that are required: time and um, time and so let's see what we do. New date. I'll just pass in new date for now. And then we also need the rocket and Prisma. So maybe in this release today, if not that, they're coming in with they're coming out with the ability to say rocket ID to connect the relationship, but it's not quite out yet. So you need to do rocket as an object, say connect, and then pass an object that says ID, and this is going to be the rocket of ID of 2. Okay, so this is what we're doing here is we're in the REPL, we're just creating something directly in the database, pressing in time rocket, and then we're connecting the relationship to this other rocket, or connecting this launch to this rocket. Now, if you have, okay, oh, so we also need a name. You have to make sure that you get all the curly braces in here right. If you don't, it'll be like, you're going to error like, wait is not a keyword or something unintuitive. Come on, Node.js. But let's see. So this launch, what's this launch going to be? Let's say Santa Claus. Unknown arg name. Oh, I passed it. I passed the name to the rocket. Inside the connect instead of here. So name. Okay. Sweet. So now we just created a rocket from the terminal from the Blitz console. So now if we go back to here, there it is. Okay, so that's pretty cool, huh? We created this thing in the database with before having to create the actual user interface to make that work. So that's nice when you're just getting started, you need to test something, run some code. The other way is to run Blitz DB Studio, and this runs Prisma Studio. So this is from Prisma. And this opens a nice user interface for viewing all your stuff. So here's the rocket, and here's the launches. Okay. So let's go ahead and add a second launch, and we're going to call this one International Space Station. And we're going to click on that rocket, and then you can link it to this other relationship to this other rocket, or to the rocket. And then I think we just click out of that, and the time is 1970. That's not quite what I'm looking for. Say 2020, 12, and let's say 0, 9. All right. And then you click the save button, and there you go. So now if you go back here, there it is. You notice how when I click back here, this updated without me reloading the page. That's because of React Query. When you come back, and refreshes that data. So that's something awesome about React Query. Thank you, Tanner, who created that. Okay, what have we got now? Okay, so if we click on one of these, we see this. So let's add a countdown timer. So how I do this is I go to this nice little site, npms. So for like npm search, npms.io, and I'm going to search for React Countdown, and it gives you nice. It's a better search than npm directly, because it gives you can see there's a quality score, popularity score, maintenance score, and then a combined score, and it ranks them by the combined score. And you can also see when it's updated, all that. So this looks like a good one. So let's go with this. And yeah, see, this is, you just pass in a date object, which is perfect because we already have the date object, right? We don't have to convert it to a date to pass it in, thanks to our serialization. So I'm going to add yarn, add react dash countdown. And then how you do that is you import countdown from React Countdown. This is the launches, what I call the launches show page. So it's kind of a terminology that comes from Ruby on Rails. The page where you're looking at a specific model, I refer to it as the show page. So it's going to be the page that is called launch ID.tsx. Go in here, we're going to add the countdown component, import that, and then we're going to you just pass in countdown and then you pass in the date. So we should be able to just say countdown date launch time. Oh, there we go. Sweet. All right, so let's add this in a div. Styling, class name, and we'll just say MB, or sorry, MY. 6. Give vertical padding to that, and we're going to do font, so font large. Is that what I want? Text large. Text large. Let's do XL and then font bold. Big enough. Or XL. There we go. Yeah. Sweet. So, all right, ready to launch the rocket, right? Oh, we have to build the rocket first, but we'll just ignore that. Cool. Well, so now we need the ability to delay the launch because the rocket's not even built yet. So obviously we're going to need to delay it. So let's go. We're going to go. Let's see. How should we do this? We only have 20 minutes left. Okay, question for you. There we have an open PR for adding forgot password, and it's just sitting here languishing because I've been too busy with other stuff fixing bugs mostly to finish this. It just needs some tests added to it. But we're going to be adding the forgot password flows into the new app by default, and all the code is right here. You can we just need to get this landed. But so my question to you is, I could walk you through adding this to your app if you want to, or if not adding to the app, I could just walk you through this code and how it works, not necessarily adding it directly, or I can just ignore it. What do you want? Would that be interesting to you? Otherwise, if I don't do that, what I would do is just kind of work more fleshing out what I have currently. So I would add in. So right now there's no Zod schema validation for like creating a rocket or updating a rocket, and I can add those Zod schemas to see how to do a production version of that, which you already have the example in the sign up and login mutations. So tell me what you want, y'all. Okay, well, you all are thinking about what you want. I can't give an estimate on when it's going to land. It would land quicker if one of you would volunteer to go and write the jest test for those new mutations. That's the only thing blocking it is just tests because it's more complex. I want to have the test for that generated in the new apps by default, so that it's that way you know if you break something. Font and VS Code, is it the same as? I have Vim and VS Code here. I think my font is. I think it's this font, same place. Mona Lisa. Mono Lisa. Okay, let me jump the link here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a button to delay this launch, and we'll see the live updates. That'll be pretty quick here, and then I'll walk through the forgot password code. Okay, so for simplicity's sake, we're going to assume that anyone can delay the launch. So if you're watching the launch and you just want to say, hey, I'm not ready to watch it yet, I want to delay it, then you just click the button and delay it. So we'll add a new button. For this delete button, we'll add a new button here beside it. It says, so let's wrap this all in a div that says space X, fitting, space X dash 6. And this should space those out nicely. And this will be delay. There we go. Edit, delay, delete. Okay, and this is, so we're going to do const update launch mutation equals use mutation update launch. Guys, this is that mutation function. Import that. Update launch mutation. And this button on click. Oh, almost had to sneeze, but it left. Update launch mutation. And this is yeah, so we need a where. So we're gonna have this where clause and data. And I'm going to, for this, I'm going to install. It's a yarn add date fn-fns. I like using this for date manipulation, date dash fns. And then so there's going to be, let's say, I think there's like add hours. Okay, so we just import this, add hours. Installed now. Add hours, and so in this update mutation, there's going to be, get rid of time. Oh, my paste messed up. I have this Vim extension that sometimes the autocomplete for brackets and stuff is weird. Data. All right, so now we're going to do this is time, and it's going to be launch. I'm going to say add hours, launch.time, and we will add 1 hour. So I think that should work. So if we click delay, this should jump up to 7. Oh, okay. So probably what happened was this is using the cache data. And so we need to tell this query to refetch because we just changed it. And we can do that by from this use query call, the second return of that tuple has a refetch function. And so after we update this, we will say update or await refetch and call that function. There we go. See that? So now we can do it again, delay, bam. So now there's one more thing, which is, let's say we want to, well, that wasn't working. I want to locate this tab and, okay, so now we have two. So if we delay it here, it updates here, but not over here for anyone watching, right? So that's no good. So how, well, the easiest way is go to the use query hook. So the first argument is that query function. Second argument is the parameters to go into that query function. And then the third argument is options. And one of the options here is refetch interval. And this is in, I think it's in milliseconds, probably. Does it say? Doesn't say that. Refetch interval. Let's just go with like 500 milliseconds for maximum performance. Okay. Now, if we click delay over here on the right side, it should update very quickly over there. Awesome. Okay, so now you have real-time interaction without GraphQL, without WebSockets, without a REST API, without any of that jazz, just good old Node.js and React and Blitz magic. Sweet. Okay. So that's all for our NASA Command Center. We'll walk through the forgot password code. Yeah, 500 milliseconds is kind of excessive. But if you deploy it serverless, if you can deploy this, you can deploy Blitz to a server or to serverless, like to Vercel or even AWS, their Edge network, Lambda Edge network. And if you do it serverless, then your backend can scale infinitely and automatically and still like very cheaply. So we have for WebSocket support, you will have to use a custom server, which means that you will not be able to deploy it serverless. And serverless doesn't really have WebSocket support, at least not yet. We have an open PR for adding a custom server that will be merged relatively soon, hopefully within a week or two here. So this month is kind of busy for everyone, I think, and so progress is a little bit slow, but. Okay, so this forgot password code. This is officially over in 9 minutes, so just kind of breeze through here, give you an overview. And definitely, if you have any questions, just paste them in there, and I'm happy to answer anything you have. Also, later today, it's in a couple hours. I think it's 2 hours from now is a topic table on Blitz where you're welcome to come hang out there too. And in that topic table, you can jump on and share your webcam and microphone, and we can like talk face to face. So it'd be cool to meet some of you more. Okay, so this forgot password code. So the first thing we're doing in here is modifying the auth-utils file, and I'm going to change this to this. We have this Hasha stuff for generating tokens. I'm going to move this into Blitz core. And so you'll be able to import like generate token from Blitz core. And so this will be even simpler. And I think this build public data thing is not needed anymore. It was mainly for TypeScript types. For for creating sessions, but we have that kind of built in native now, so you don't, so the type is correct. And, we just add a link to the login form. It says, hey, forgot your password. And then we have the forgot password. Oh, my text is kind of small, isn't it? Sorry about that. That's better. So we have forgot password mutation. So this is one of the big things. So we have this required email, and then the first thing is we get the user, and the second thing is we generate a token for to be able to email a token to them, and that token will be used to identify the forgot password request. And then we encode that thing to be URL safe. We hash it, and then we store the hashed version in the database. So we don't store the raw version, we store the hashed version. We have an expires at time. And if we found the user, we will delete any existing reset password request. You can see we also add a new token model in the database for like reset password is a token type. You could also use the tokens for email confirmation. So like if they sign up and require them to click on a link, it would be easy to add that. So we're going to delete any existing things, and then we're going to save this new token in the database. So you connect it to that certain user, set the type as reset password, the expires, and the hashed version, and then email to who you send it to. Oh, now we send an email. So this has kind of a nice little mailer pattern set up. And we'll go look at this in a minute here, but we have this forgot password mailer. You pass in who you're going to send it to in the token, and then you call send. Right? And then if you don't find a user, we just set something here. We wait a certain amount of time so that attackers can't really tell the difference between if there's a valid user or not. This change doesn't matter. Mutation, there's a reset. So there's a forgot password mutation, which is where you're saying, hey, I forgot my password, send me the email. And the reset password mutation is saying, hey, I got the email, I clicked on the link, and now I'm actually setting my new password. So we get the password in the token, and we hash that token because we have to hash it to be able to look up that hashed version in the database. And then we look that up. If it doesn't exist, throw an error. And then if it's good, we go ahead and delete it so it can't be used again. If it has expired, then we throw another error. And if everything is good, then we're going to go ahead and take their new password, hash it, and stick it in here. And then also, we will delete all the existing login sessions for that user to make sure that they have to re-log in everywhere. Again, that one doesn't matter. So there's a single forgot password page that does both of this. So it has forgot to, let's go down here towards the bottom. Okay, here. So you get the query, it's stored, the token is stored in the URL query string. If that token is there, we display the reset password form, which allows them to create a new password. But if it's not there, then we know they're new and they're just saying, hey, I want to reset, and then that'll trigger the email. So this is all basic form stuff. And then new the validations. Here is an example of how to do, if you want to do a password and a password confirmation with Zod, you can use this refine thing and you can actually check it and then set a new error. And then here's the new schema stuff. So tokens, the token model. Okay, here's the forgot password mailer. So this is pretty simple. Take a function, take in some stuff, some inputs, whatever we need. We can set this kind of message object. from to subject, and then we return this object that has a send on it. And so this we return this send object so that it allows you to add other things in here. So instead of send, it could be queue or send later or something like that. And so it gives you ability to actually trigger the sending of that thing separately from creating the mailer. The other thing you could do is call the mailer and then pass it to another function, and that function will call send, whatever you want. It's more flexible. So if it's in production, it's just going to throw an error because you have to set up your production email. I can't do it for you, unfortunately. But here's an example of how you would do it. Postmark, you simply call postmark.send email, and it'll send it. And then in development, it has we have a preview email function, which comes from preview email, and that will open this email in your browser. So it's really nice for development. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. So that brings us to the end. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and hopefully you learned something. Hopefully, yeah, it was helpful. You enjoyed it, and let me give you a couple. Let me give you the Blitz JS website. Let me post that in here. And then there's also the Blitz Slack you can join. If you are, yeah, just feel free to join the Slack. Ask any questions if you need help. Um, love you to contribute to Blitz itself if you're interested. And we have a page on our documentation site for how to contribute. We have a lot of open issues that are marked ready to work on. Any of those are available for you to pick up. And then again, the topic table is in, I think, 2 hours, and you're all welcome to join and chat there face to face. I wish I had some audience like recording of an audience applause that I could just like play right now, like, yeah. I'm sure you're all clapping, but I can't hear you. A question about beta stable release. So we're basically in beta release right now, just not quite officially. I think there are just a couple issues left that I need to fix before I say it's officially beta, but it should be very soon. At this point, it's looking like beta may not be till January. I was thinking it'd be like right now, but we'll see. It'll be very soon, and it's essentially in beta. There's a bunch of apps that are already running Blitz in production. I'm running it in production myself, and the wiki. You go to our repo. There's a wiki that has a list of multiple different apps that are running in production already with Blitz. The main thing alpha wise is like a few edge case bugs and a few things like that aren't quite finished. Like it's basically beta. There's nothing major coming, no major changes. Oh, I was going to show you this. Oops. Couple links for switching to Postgres if you want to deploy to production. Well, that was weird. Okay. So there's the documentation on how to switch to Postgres, and then also if you want to deploy to render, is very easy, but it's not free. You can create it. You can deploy something to see how it works, and then shut it down, and it'll be cheap. But you can also deploy to Heroku, and that is, I think they have a totally free tier. Your app won't run 24/7. It'll only run like 12 hours out of the day, something like that, maybe less.